Hi, I'm Kathleen Cooke. Welcome to the Influence Women's Podcast. We're excited today to have Linda Wright. She's a producer and a writer, an award-winning writer. So you're going to love listening to her about her journey. If you've ever wanted to take a chance and been afraid to do so, you don't want to miss this next interview with Linda Wright. Stay tuned. Now, like us and subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell. Stay tuned for this great interview with Linda Wright. Hi, it's so great to have you with us today, and I'm excited to bring our guest interview today. Linda Wright is a writer, producer, director. She's been in the business for many years. She's got a lot of wisdom to share with us today on producing and writing and some insights and tips. She loves entertainment, particularly family entertainment, and making sure that our hearts are connected in the right places and that we're creating entertainment for the entire family. So, Linda, it's so great having you with us today. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got into the industry, and where you are today.
Thank you. So
Yes.
excited to be here. Happy to be here. Thank you so much, Kathleen. So a little bit about me, aside from what you've already read. So I actually came out here to Hollywood 28 years ago. I was born and raised in Boston. And I came out as a single mother of 3 children. They were 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade at the time. And the reason why it took so long for me to get here is I've always wanted to come to Hollywood and make movies as a teenager. I did not have a great upbringing, and dreams were just stupid. So by the time I was a teenager, the dreams were just dead and gone. And it took, and life goes on in spite of the dreams. And I didn't have a relationship with God at that time. And it took Michael Landon's death when I was actually in my 30s for, like, God will take anything to get your attention.
That's so true. So true.
God will put a burning bush anywhere he wants. And it was his death that made me, like, I got really, really upset. I didn't know him, but I was overly upset, and it didn't make any sense to me. I thought I was going nuts. You thought I would have known him or something. But what it really was God used that to put a fire back into the dream, call it the calling, that was always on my life. And at that point, though, I was young 30s, with 3 children, and none of it made sense. And of course, in our journey with God, how many times do we have to learn the hard way? It doesn't need to make sense.
Yes.
It needs to make sense to him.
So true.
We need to obey and follow the voice of God. Well, I didn't really have a relationship with God, but there was something in me that was like, I got to get out of here. What am I doing? Like, what have I done with my life? That was about me.
Mm-hmm.
That was about what I wanted to do. I was doing everything else I was supposed to do. Get married, have children, buy a house, have 1.5 cars, work your way up to 2 cars, work, regurgitate the next morning for 5 days. Nothing satisfied me except for when I was being creative, which comes very, very naturally to me. So to make a long story short, it took about 1991, 1993. It took 2 years for me to come to the understanding, and it took a counselor to know what was wrong with me internally, because I didn't know. And she just basically said, there are 2 Lindas inside of you, and they're fighting each other. There is the one that God created, and there's the one that man created.
Mm-hmm.
Said, I hope the one that God created wins. So
we all hope that the one God created in us wins as well, don't we? We want to have the creator God win in us.
Exactly. But and then it takes that outsider to speak into us, because it's not always going to come from your inner circle. It's not going to come. It did not come from my family. It did not come from my friends. It did not come from my pastor. Everybody thought I was nuts right up until the day I left. But I ended up calling Michael's secretary, who I had become friends with after his death. And I said, I need to come out and visit you. She said, come on out. So I flew out a couple weekends later, and I just sat in her place overlooking, Malibu, the PCH, the ocean, and I just got quiet. When I got on the plane to go home, which was Boston at the time, I just heard that still small voice saying, there's nothing back there for you anymore. And I knew that I knew that I knew that was the voice of God. I went back, I landed, I got the kids together, the family, and I said, we're leaving. And
Yeah.
what school is done.
Takes courage, doesn't it? Took so much courage to do that.
And then some.
Yes.
Because you read
Yes.
30 some odd years of your life, you have no support, but you know that you've got to go.
Yes.
And I knew when I got here, my mandate was very simple, to do the type of family projects and programs that Michael Landon would do. And I have never veered from that at all. And so that's how it all started. And that was 28 years ago. And every time I want to pack my bags and leave California, God will send someone or something or devotional or whatever, like, you're not going anywhere because I'm not done yet. So that plays into, it's never what we think it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
There is the natural way of progressing in a career. And then there is God's way, also known as the supernatural way. And again, none of what's happened to me has ever made sense. But I'm still here. And I'm not done until he says, I'm done.
Yes. And I love the fact that you keep going and saying the word, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Because with things with God, it never does make sense. I think that he calls us into the unknown. He calls us into the challenges. And sometimes it's just our courage and our identity and our knowledge and engagement, our personal engagement with him that allows us to say, okay, let's go. I'm going to pack my bags and go where he's called us to be, or to stay, like you said right now, whenever you think about moving or moving on, that God's called you into something else. And so tell us some of the projects that you've enjoyed working on and that God's called you in, that you've been able to produce and work on, that has particularly resonated with you and the audiences.
Well, I could talk a lot about probably my most recent project. I have written a family drama. I wrote it first as a pilot. And there are some gentlemen in the industry who are very, very successful faith-based producers, writers, involved with movies like God's Not Dead, Nefarious. I mean, just have such a resume on their end, very successful. Read this pilot and tell me that was the best script I ever read, which any writer, wants to hear.
Right.
I've not heard. I've heard great script or whatever, but those words were like, okay, this is really awesome. At that point, it was a pilot. And then because of the feedback and the courage I was getting, I decided to make it also a movie, which is basically the pilot and the second episode, put together in one. And I decided to leave it up to God which way this was going to go. But it seemed that every time somebody got a hold of this script and it touched somebody, the reactions were incredible. So I could tell that God's hand was on it. And I mean, I have 20 other scripts, and there's 2 others I'm working on right now, which is a period drama Western and a Christmas rom-com. But there was something about this that, like, doors just kept opening. And I ended up sitting down with a colleague one night, and she had read the pilot and said, what do you want to do with this? And I said, well, I can try and sell as a series. We have a strike impending. That's not going to work this year because it did last quite a long time. And I just told her, I said, I think maybe we could pursue the crowdfunding for the movie, but we need a proof of concept to play with the big boys. And she immediately said, I'll pay for it.
So yeah, that's my next question for you. So not to interrupt, but
yes,
you just finished a proof of concept.
Yes.
Tell us exactly what a proof of concept is and why that's so important in the industry today.
Well, a proof of concept to me is simply, I'll just call it a trailer. Everybody knows what a trailer of a movie is. A trailer became known as a sizzle reel. Sizzle reels became known as a proof of concept. It's still the same thing. It's a trailer. Most trailers are done after movies are completed. Proof of concept is basically a trailer of certain hand-picked scenes of a movie or TV show that you shoot before the actual project is in production. So we shot 9 scenes in a wonderful 12-hour, fun-filled, joy-filled, prayerful day in Van Nuys. I ended up producing it because the producer dropped out of sight. And so I hired all the cast, I hired all the crew, and I hand chose who I wanted to work with. So Ryan O'Quinn is in it, Robin DeMarco is in it, Renee Lawless is in it, Brian Pearson, Sydney Kasdan is in it, and they just nailed their characters. And then about 5 days before we were scheduled to shoot October 28th, I just called the DP and I said, okay, I got to switch hats now as director. So are we good? He's like, we're good. And so then I started working on my directors. I did my own storyboards and all of that, because when I worked for Warner Brothers, I've learned all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the role.
God never wastes anything, does he? All those things that you think, oh gosh, what am I doing working on this and when am I working on that? Those are things that he's going to use for you in the future to use.
Absolutely. And he had to remind me on a day when I was getting very stressed out, overwhelmed. I'll use the word overwhelmed. He just reminded me of giving everything you need. And I was like, you know what, God, you're right. And I just sat down and I relaxed and I did the producing and I did the storyboard and I hired the cast, I hired the crew. I interviewed, I did it, and it was wonderful. And I don't mean to say, I did it all. I'm just saying it's giving glory to him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's positioned me in all of the hard work and all the different departments and things I've learned at Warner Brothers Studios. He's laying a foundation, and sometimes here's the key: sometimes we don't know that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know he's laying a foundation because we can't see in the future, but he can. He knows what he needs to do. It says the steps of the righteous man are ordered of the Lord. Sometimes we don't even realize those steps are being ordered because we're in the situation and don't know what's next. But he's got the grand picture. And Isaiah 46:10 says he makes known the end from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
He knew the plans for me before I even got in the car and left Boston.
Right.
My plans absolutely did not line up in any way, shape, or form. None of it at all. And no matter what the enemy threw in my path, and no matter how many times this happened, the desire and the dream and the mandate never left. And so I encourage writers that even when life is throwing you stuff, or you're in a pit, you can't seem to figure your way out to get back to the career you want, write one sentence of dialogue each night before you go to bed in your current script that you're working on, or your current book, whatever it is you're working on. And I did that for 2 solid years. So when I lay down at night, I knew I did something, because faith without works is dead.
That's right. We gotta move one foot in front of the other, don't we? And that goes to my next question for you too, Linda. You're starting to talk a little bit about some of the things you do that help you get your juices going as a writer, or some of the things that we need to be doing as a writer that are part of the discipline of being a writer. Can you share with us some of the things you do that help you become a better writer and some of the discipline practices that you do?
I'll give you the biggest secret. Get up really early in the morning, make your coffee, your tea, when the house is quiet, grab your Bible, and sit down with the Lord, as they say in the signs, but first, coffee and Jesus.
Yeah.
That is the greatest thing. It's not a secret, it's not a trick, it's the most fundamental way to start your day. I pray always for supernatural, radical favor with God and with man. I pray for divine opportunities, divine open doors, divine contracts, divine alignments for my assignment, and for divine creativity. Those are very staple prayers that go out of my mouth every single morning. And I'd say the second biggest practice I had, because remember, when I came here, this is when God got a hold of me. I didn't come here as a strong Christian woman as I am today. I fumbled my way through the movie set.
God was with you on that journey.
He was. And the first most important practice I had, before I just shared about the Bible practice in the morning, is I just determined that for every no I got, I made 10 more phone calls right away. And I did it faithfully. And I did it year after year after year. Some of those phone calls, and I have the gift of cold calling, and a lot of people don't. They think they can't call, or that person. You have nothing to lose by calling. The worst they can do is be nasty, hang up, or say no. Those calls have brought me into major offices, have created relationships that have still lasted all these years. You know, you have God on your side. If you truly, truly know, not believe, but know what you know, that God has called you to do in the industry, it don't matter what it looks like. And I was up against a lot, Kathleen. I just want to interject. I could not tell anybody back at Warner Brothers that I had children. They would never have hired me. Not to work on a set, work in an office, never mind run a production company, one of the most prolific producers.
And why do you think that was?
Well, as soon as they know you have children, they'd rather someone who didn't.
Because they know that's a long hours. It's a commitment over your family.
Absolutely. And they don't believe that you can show up every single day and do what you're supposed to do. So let me backtrack. So one of the directors I worked for, is his assistant, he's since retired. We got together about 5 years ago. He remembered me on the set. Everyone hated him. For some reason, he liked me and actually got a gift on rap days. We got reconnected, and we're sitting at Art's Deli. And I was talking to Larry, and he said, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you just tell me you had 3 children? And I said, yes. He said, did I miss something? I said, no, I didn't tell you. And he just kind of looked at me and said, would you have hired me if you knew I was a single mom of 3? And he said, no, actually, I wouldn't have. So I hope it's better out there. I'm not on the crew anymore. I hope it's better. That's what I was up against back at that time. But it was, again, God setting me up with such an amazing foundation. So, and then I also want to address the writers. I went to every single writing conference you could go to, every writing seminar there was. I even paid for the UCLA professor, Richard Walters. I flew him out to Boston when I still lived there to speak to a group of 100 writers. And I produced that because I couldn't afford to go to LA. So I instead,
producer, so bring LA to you. That's a good practice.
So we had 96 people in the Copley Plaza Hotel, which is where the firm was being filmed back with Tom Cruise. And I got to go for free because I brought him to Boston, and I got everyone to sign up. But what I learned from all of these seminars is they can't teach you the gift that God has given you in your heart. They can't really teach you dialogue. They'll teach you structure, they'll teach you act structure, they'll teach you how to write a movie, how to structure a feature, how to structure TV. They cannot give you the gift of dialogue. And at that time, there were really only books about screenwriting for features. Well, I knew I was television. And there was one book out there, it's called How to Write for Television by Madeline DiMaggio. And I devoured that book in 48 hours. It's still on my end table. And it was one of the most, it was just all about television. And it taught me secrets from writing between a television movie of the week and writing a feature. That's why I've created the Screenwriting for Seminar seminar. Mm-hmm. But it's a gift inside of you. So you have to call out the stirring of the gifts and talents the Lord has given you. The Bible says he'll make room for it. So those are,
and people don't realize there is such a difference in structure and in direction between writing for television and writing for the big screen, the film, for cinema and film. And there are certain nuances and certain beats you have to hit. What would you say would be one or two things that you would share that's the biggest difference between television writing and film writing today? What's that you could share with someone?
well, obviously you're talking a 3-act structure or a 7-act, and I believe Hallmark is 8 acts. You know, there are some people that are going for that end. I call it the end tag. I didn't do well with the whole index card thing. A lot of people teach you to do outlines of index cards, and I ripped them all up. I gave it 6 months and like, this is not working.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You got to move on, right?
And that to bring my
That's something you learn too.
right. And that to that point, answer your question, you have to read these things and take them with a grain of salt and stick with what sticks inside of you, but don't try to do everything. Everyone has their own way of writing. Everyone has their own way of starting a script, outlining a script, finishing a script, you know, rereading the script. And of course, a second pair of eyes is always, I always wholeheartedly say, get a second pair of eyes. So everyone just has to do their studying and do their groundwork and pay their dues if they will by studying and figure out what works for you. Because not every writer is the same. There are some writers that are index card, and I'm like, it didn't work for me, you know? So find their own niche.
Well, I think a big difference with television and films too is just kind of knowing the audience and in the environments that they're going to be sitting in. You know, when you're in the cinema, you're in a big dark room, and you know, there's not a whole lot going around. Although these days I get a little frustrated with the number of people that can't get off their phone and watch a movie and talking on the phone during the movie. But television, you know, you're in a smaller environment, a smaller screen, you're coming and going. There may be kids running around in the room at the time or another television going. I know so many people today are consuming media on multiple screens at one time. They're watching a television show, they have their laptop in front of them, and they're on their phone at the same time. So, so knowing that in writing and how to capture the attention and keep the audience's attention is essential in our writing today as good writers.
You have to have, and to that, when I was raised, we had what was called the family hour on television. You know, from 7 to 9 o'clock at night, nobody had to worry about what was on. Nobody had to worry about what people were wearing, saying, doing, and there's no reason for that not to come back. The public has to demand it. But I have stood on that all these 28 years, and I don't care what these executives have to say. Culture wants this. The shutdown has helped me. It's helped open a lot of people's eyes, especially parents who are now like, holy cow. So I want to get people back on the couch. I want people to put down their phones and dedicate a movie time or a series time to just sitting together. And it's also up to the parents at home or whoever's caretaking for kids to tell them to put their electronics away instead of allowing them, because they're becoming addicted to it. So at the end of the day, it's just way too much. However, if you have a great storyline, you develop great characters, and you emotionally, dramatically draw them in to your program, to your story, you will convince people. You don't have to tell them to put down their electronic. They'll willingly do it because now it's caught their eye. That it's not just catching their eye; it's catching the heartstrings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's important. That's what makes people come back.
That's right. Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, Linda, if you could tell your 20 something self something that you wish you'd known today in your 20s, what would that be?
Well, I would, if I had to do it all over again, obviously I would have pursued the dream a lot sooner, but as you said,
Sooner. Mm-hmm.
nothing. So that's something I would have told my 20 something self. But that's okay. I was bearing my children. God blessed me with three healthy, wonderful children. So here's the thing. You really can never look back and regret anything. And for example, my children's father died very, very young and very tragic. And out of that tragedy, I had two grandsons, the birth to one of my children out of pain, if you will. And she one day said to me, I would trade it all if I could have Dad back. I said, no, you don't, because you wouldn't have them.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about perspective. So I would say to my 20 self, get in the car and leave now. Didn't know any better. It is what it is. And would I change anything in the last 28 years? No, because if God wanted my resume to burst open and be rich and famous, he would have already done it. It's about being content with little and about being content with a lot. It's about trusting God in some really horrible, difficult situations. I'm no different than anybody watching this. I call us the starving artists. We don't know where the next check comes from. We don't know how many jobs we need to work. But even if it's the 11th hour, my household bills have always been paid. And sometimes in the most crazy, ridiculous ways. And it's made me to have to trust him.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we trust him, Kathleen. But when stuff hits the fan, do we really? Do we have a deep, deep trust in God and his word? There have been many times I've woke up in the morning, the first thing I've done is fall out of my bed and fall on my face. Because I couldn't take another day. But God. So I want to leave just a couple of quick things, and so behind me. What I do is I put up things the Lord had said to me, or scriptures that encourage me, along with all of my Hollywood Boulevard. These are all different projects I've worked on, and Shirley is up there because Cindy Williams was one of my dear friends. So I was listening to a video last year. Actually, it's still this year. I'm sorry. And the woman was talking about dream, plan, build, launch, scale. So I wrote it because I'm an artist, right? We are visual people. And I realized
that
what it was showing me was in 2023, what I have been doing is dreaming, planning, and building. Not just one stream of revenue, but multiple. Okay. And then in 2024, it's a launch. And it's a scale, which means you're going to bring your business up. And for those who might be watching who know me, they know I am a Top Gun Maverick fanatic. And my friends call me Maverick because the very definition of Maverick is you do not conform. You dig in and you dig in and you keep going no matter what it looks like. And in the movie, Maverick says one thing that struck me. Don't think, just do.
So good.
Yep. Those are behind me on my wall every morning. When I come and sit at my desk, I see those before I turn around and look at my screen. So I would say it does that. I am in my 60s and I have absolutely no problem telling anybody that. I'm still to this day having the time of my life, even though it does not look like what I thought God was going to do for me. And this is why I love helping other writers, being a consultant, screenwriting, whatever. You just got to keep going. You do not know tomorrow is the day God decided that was going to be your big day. You got to keep going, never give up.
So good. So good. I love that, Linda. Thanks so much for sharing with us today and your journey. And you've really capsulized so many things that we need to stop and think about along the way, going, risking, sticking to it. All of those kind of things in the business are so, so important. And we're expecting with you in 24 to have that big launch. So that's so fantastic. Thanks for joining us today on the Influence Women podcast. Thanks for joining us today for the Influence Women podcast with Linda Wright. She's been a great speaker and teaching us how to take chances, how to live the life when the challenges are great. I hope you've enjoyed this interview. If you have, like us and subscribe to our channel, click the bell, and don't forget to join us for the next Influence Women podcast coming your way soon.